So if I do everything I just mentioned, put you in that policy, hoping that you'll have more money long-term because I believe what I see on the non-guaranteed side of the illustration, but then it does not happen, what's the issue? The issue, in my opinion, is if I'm you, I would view it as, all right, you put me in a product that guaranteed me less, you hoped I would make more, and I bought it because I believed that I would make more based on what you said. You made more money, but then I didn't make more. Like, that's the issue right there. What I want to talk about in today's video has to do with policy design, with whole life insurance policies and maximizing the cash value. But it has to do with a specific question that we've heard a lot recently, which is, if I go with a higher base premium, will that result in more cash value long term? Because sometimes we hear individuals, being individuals in the industry, my peers, other agents, state, yes, it will give you more money long term. And then some state it should give you more money long term. I state that I have not ever seen it give me more money long term based on reality, not projections. Therefore, I'm not comfortable recommending it to clients. So what I want to start with is where this comes from. Because if you go with a higher base premium on a life insurance policy, talking about the basics of policy design, what does that mean? Well, you can choose where your money goes. It can go toward the premium or the paid up additions rider. And base premium dollars typically do not show up in cash value in the first year. If it's a traditional product, some policies do give you some cash value. But in short, premium dollars result in minimum cash value in the early years, whereas PUA dollars really accelerate the cash value growth. That's where I see money immediately. It also copies what a lot of corporations do when you look at how they use whole life insurance policies for the cash value component, being an asset on their balance sheet. So where does this come from? The idea that if I go with a higher base premium, which means you will have less money up front no matter what. That's going to be the case if you go with a higher base premium. So if you take less, does that mean you will have more long term? Where it comes from is this. On an illustration, if you go with a higher base premium, what that will result in is a higher dividend payout on that illustration. So for example, if I see an illustration with $10,000 per year going in, and illustration A has a $1,000 base premium, and then $9,000 toward PUAs, versus illustration B has a $5,000 base premium, and let's say the other $5,000 is going toward PUAs. What you would see is option A would have a lot more cash value in the beginning. However, option B, when we look at the dividend column on a life insurance illustration, would be higher than what we see on option A. And I'm going to demonstrate that in a second as well. We're going to look at some actual illustrations side by side. But in short, what you'll see is the higher the base premium is, the higher the dividend payout will be. So often we hear this argument that right now dividends are low, and if dividends go up, well, then you'll really have more money long term, because if you have a higher base premium in an increasing dividend interest rate environment, you should really see the results be fruitful to your policy, because the greater the dividend payout should result in more cash value long term. So it sounds great. And then we also hear this saying that there's no deals in life insurance, which I'm like, all right, there is in my opinion, which I'm going to get to. So let's continue on. Here's what I want to state about a high base premium. We'll start with the obvious, and this is how it impacts me as a life insurance agent or any life insurance agent that you're working with. The higher the base premium is, the greater the agent commission is. The base premium is the #1 driver of agent compensation when you look at life insurance sales, period. And we've got videos that provide a detailed breakdown as far as how all of the commissions work. However, the #1 driver is that base premium. What a base premium also does is it negatively impacts the upfront cash value for the policyholder. The policyholder in this video is you. So if we stop there, what do we have so far? A high base premium pays me more and gives you less upfront. That's step one. Number two, a policyholder has weaker guaranteed values. So if you go with a higher base premium, you will see less in guaranteed cash value compared to what you would see in a policy where you have a lower base premium and more money going toward the PUA rider. So in summary, I, the agent, make more money, but I justify it to myself by informing you that you'll have more money long term. We're talking 30 to 40 years down the road. And the reason why is because dividends are more favorable on base premium dollars than they are PUA dollars. And if dividends go up, then you might see it somewhere between 25 and 30 years instead. So first off, that's a long time. Secondly, is it even true? Like, that's my question there. So we're going to look at some actual performance, but before we do that, let's provide some information on this piece here, because this can be complicated for a lot of people, including people in the industry. So what we've got here is a 10-pay policy. And this 10-pay policy is with MassMutual. On the left, we've got a 100% base premium policy. A 10-pay policy will credit a portion of the base premium toward PUAs. It's about 35%, which is why we see the $100,000 base premium match the annual outlay, and the first year cash value is almost $37,000. So about 37% right out of the gates. This would be an equivalent to a policy that has call it a 60-40 design if it's a traditional whole life insurance policy, like a whole life 100 when I say traditional. Before we go to the example on the right, here's what I want to touch on. This column right here, annual dividend. What do you notice here in the first year? $37.11. Next year, $8,000 and change. Starts out with a decent dividend, and that dividend on the illustration, this is pulled directly from an illustration, continues to increase year over year. Now, let's look at the same policy, but designed differently. So we've got the same MassMutual 10-pay policy. Both of these are on 35-year-old males, both the same health rating. Everything's identical in terms of the company, product, health rating, dividend rate. The only difference is the design of the product. 10/90 split. What that means is we have 10% of the $100,000 directed toward the base premium. Then we've got $90,000 toward PUAs. There's about $1,000, give or take a couple $100, that is directed toward a term insurance rider. Specifically with Mass, we've got their Lister term rider. And why I'm adding that detail here is because when we add that term rider, it does delay the dividends for 1 year. We see a 0 in our dividend column of a life insurance illustration in year 1. So here, if we just focus on the dividend column, what do we notice? Well, the example on the left, I've got $37, almost $3,800. In the example on the right, I've got a goose egg. However, I would say this if I'm a consumer. I don't really care about that column because when I look at the cash value, it's a world of difference. Here I've got almost $90,000, 90% of my $100,000 payment, whereas over here, I've got just about 37%. The cash value is your money column. That includes any dividends, which assumes only the surplus, the guaranteed rate, all expenses associated with the policy, the cash value, that's your money column. On the illustration, that will read total cash value or net cash value. Now, as we look at this guy, let's look at year 4. How much have you paid in by year 4 if you made these payments of $100,000 per year for 4 years? $400,000. What's your cash value? $401. How about the example to the left? We've paid in a total of $400,000 and you've got $309. So you have a difference of almost $100,000 in cash value. However, the dividend payout is not quite double, but you're getting close to double what we have over here. So the reason why the dividend's higher, but the cash value is not, is because we have that higher base premium over here. The higher the base premium, the higher the dividend is on an illustration. So again, going back to that argument, if dividends increase over time, we should see this increase even more, which will in turn pull up the cash value, and that's where you should see a policy with a higher base premium outperform a policy with a lower base premium. And we've got the same case study with a 50-50 design as well. We've got it up at the video in the top right-hand corner. But as we continue on this example, by year 10, there's the difference, which it's noticeable. It's over $100,000. Same out of pocket to you, the policyholder. Let's look at the actual cash value difference here. This will make it a bit easier. So the first 10 years, when you've paid in $1 million, you've got almost $110,000 more, with the example being the 1090 split. However, as time passes, what do you notice here? We said 30 to 40 years down the road, we should see a higher base premium policy deliver more cash value on a non-guaranteed basis. Repeat that word, non-guaranteed basis. You'll see why in a minute. So eventually what happens? Well, we see the policy with the higher base premium because of those higher dividends. They're continuously received by the policyholder, and eventually they've got more cash value and death benefit for that matter with the high base premium design. So now I see how much less I have with the 1090 design. So going back to the argument here, which is what? A higher base premium, the initial argument, a higher base premium will result in higher dividends, which should give you more money long term. You can prove that out on an illustration. The thing is, what happens if we look at the guarantees? So here's the exact same illustration side by side, but assuming only the guaranteed values, no dividends are ever paid. Let me know if you would still go with this option for the stronger long-term performance. First year, about 33%. Because you don't have that dividend of about $3,700. That's the difference between the guaranteed cash value column on this sheet and the non-guaranteed cash value column on the last sheet. Over here, about $87,000 in cash value, a little bit less because the term rider expense is higher in this example. However, this does reflect the net cash value. When's your break-even point? Between years 13 and 14. And the guaranteed rate, by the way, with this product is at 2% on both examples, same product. What's the break even over here? Almost year 20, year 21, you are positive. So let's take a look at the difference in cash value, shall we? So what do we see here as we scroll down? Well, by the 10th year, very similar to the non-guaranteed example. A little over 100 grand more in cash value. But the difference is, because there's no dividends being paid, I see the example with the lower base premium pull further and further ahead. And that'll be the case every single time. When you look at the guarantees, the playing field is somewhat leveled, and I see which example will have more money guaranteed. So am I interested in greater non-guaranteed potential or what's guaranteed as I'm looking at different options? So that can make the decision difficult for some people. However, here's an important piece to mention. Here's my issue with selling someone a policy that has a higher base premium based on the fact that they might have more money long term. Might is the key word. On that illustration, it looks like it. So we've seen policies, or I should say illustrations with high base premiums, illustrate great values long term, but then when reality hits, it underdelivers. And think of it, if you're that consumer, you buy that policy based on that illustration and the greater long-term potential, but then it doesn't outperform that same policy, but with a lower base premium, the one with the stronger guarantees. So you gave up what was guaranteed, you gave up the stronger upfront cash value, and hoped that you would have more money long-term by giving up more upfront, but then it didn't happen. That is the issue right there, especially when you bundle that with the fact that the agent made more there. So here is my issues in summary. What I just mentioned is my real issue there. But the policyholder receives less money. So first, they took that policy out, hoping they would have more money long term. They receive less cash value than what they thought they would have. Now, on the flip side, we've seen minimum base premium designs deliver the strongest cash value, not based on illustrations, but based on these two words right here, actual performance. Let's take a look here. So what we've got is the strongest guaranteed values when we actually look at the illustrations, but then on top of that, real performance. This is the important piece. So what we've got on the left is a policy. So this is an illustration. In 2007, I was in college at the time, and this was for a 30-year-old individual, ultra preferred. The health rating classification with this company at that time was super preferred. Super! Here's the dividend interest rate, 6.75%. Here's what he paid, $24K per year, and this assumes any life insurance illustration will do this. unless you make changes, we'll assume the company's present dividend rate just remains the same forever. So what we've got here, first 2 years, no dividends. First year cash value, because this is a 100% base premium policy, nothing to show for it in cash value. Second year, he pays in $24K. He's got about $22,000. The dividends here. With that rate at 675, here's the actual dividend payout he's expected to receive. This is on the original issue illustration. Break-even point between years 10 and 11, which is when he has more money in cash value than what he's paid into the policy. So with all of that said, take note of this. Purple column and the dividend rate. And then scroll your eyes to the right, actual performance. So how we attain this actual performance is we reference the annual statements, the status reports through the insurance company's advisor portal, what we have access to, and pulled the actual cash values each year, what he received on his statements, in addition to the annual dividend and the death benefit, so we can see what was actually paid to the individual from the insurance company. Annual dividend, we'll compare those year over year, but I want to highlight something first that's very important here. Look what happened with the dividend interest rate. The original illustration was at 6.75%, and for the first 6 years, it actually increased and was higher than the 6.75%. So if you're a policyholder, what would you think should happen in this scenario? Well, what should happen is I should receive 1, higher dividends than what the illustration shows, and 2, my cash value should be higher. Yet when we look at the cash value, is that the case? Let's take a look again. If you start by year 3, 390. And what happened over here? It was still 390. But the issue is the dividend rate has come up. So that dividend actually decreased. It's the same dollar number, but we've got a dividend rate at 7.3 instead of 675. How about by year 6? Dividend rate has been higher each and every year. I'm at 420, yet that original issue illustration was at 427. And the cash value difference here, look at that. About $1,000 there, a little bit more. Then as time passes, well, it gets worse. Here we go. Dividend rate comes down a little bit, and I do not see the jump in actual dividends compared to what was illustrated on the issue illustration. So in short, we ran these actual numbers through 2020. His actual break-even point was between years 12 and 13. There's his cash values, and we can compare them to the original. Wasn't happy at all. Who would be in a case like that, like this? So my point to this is what we've observed over time is when policies have higher base premiums, yes, on an illustration, that shows greater dividends. But in reality, we see things can be adjusted behind the scenes that results in lesser dividends. They're not guaranteed. So I want to ask myself, am I comfortable going with a higher base premium, knowing that I could potentially receive greater dividends and greater cash value long-term, but I'm guaranteed less long-term, I'm guaranteed less upfront, and from what I've seen based on actual results history with policies that have been in force for almost 15 years, I'm like, I'm not comfortable with that. I'm not comfortable giving everything up for the hope that I'll have more long-term, and then it doesn't pan out. So on the flip side, here's a policy we put in force in 2016. And what we've got on the left is the original issue illustration compared to the right. Actual performance until you see the end of this line here. So I've got to update this particular one. We did run an updated illustration in force for 2022, but my point here is we see a similar pattern with declining dividend rates. The issue illustration assumed 7.1% forever. The actual policy, the dividend rate has decreased over time. So what do we see here? Decreasing dividends. However, how do they look? This is a policy where of that $150,000, a little bit less actually, at $15K is directed toward the base premium. So we've got a minimum base premium plowing money into PUAs, and we have a case where he's still breaking even between years 4 and 5, whereas over here, the issue illustration was also between years 4 and 5. This is not my favorite comparison because by year 4, he actually paid in 150, whereas on the original plan, it was 125 in year 4. We've got a full breakdown on this in the above video. It just goes through how dividends really work, and we walk through this policy line by line. But in short, we've seen these policies with low base premiums and higher PUA allocations, 1, provide greater cash value on a guaranteed basis, but 2, with respect to actual performance, we've seen them deliver, which is fantastic. All right, so we had a decent amount of information there. So to summarize everything, we covered a lot there regarding the different points. Here's really how I view it, as far as the argument being that a higher base premium will result in more money long-term because of the higher dividends, how I view it, and then I'll talk about how to get it right. So my view, and then how to get it right. Let's just put right, okay. So my view is this. If I set up a policy with a higher base premium that guarantees a consumer less money in cash value, it guarantees that they will have less money up front, and it also guarantees that I'll make more money, all under the hope or the assumption that they will have more money long term because of this argument that dividends are more favorable on the base premium, and it could deliver more money long term. It's like we haven't actually seen it. So if I do everything I just mentioned, put you in that policy, hoping that you'll have more money long term because I believe what I see on the non-guaranteed side of the illustration, but then it does not happen, what's the issue? The issue, in my opinion, is if I'm you, I would view it as, all right, you put me in a product that guaranteed me less, you hoped I would make more, and I bought it because I believed that I would make more based on what you said. You made more money, but then I didn't make more. Like, that's the issue right there. If it was guaranteed, or if we had proof of performance that the higher base premium products have delivered greater cash values, I'd be all for it. But my view is I don't like the higher base premium design because I have not seen it deliver stronger cash values in reality, only on illustrations, and we've got to have the proof of performance. The proof is so important because when you look at the whole life insurance industry as a whole, so the life insurance industry as a whole, and specifically whole life insurance, that's what I meant to say, it does not have a good reputation. And a big issue is often people take out policies for the cash value benefit, they underdeliver, and they say, this policy stinks, I wish I never would have bought it. Where we've seen that not happen is on the corporate level, also with wealthy individuals, and the big difference there is when they take out policies, they're set up for maximum cash value, the strongest guarantees on paper, and then they end up often delivering the strongest actual cash values based on all of the data we've seen from policies that were issued in the 70s and 80s, and also policies that we put in force more recently. So how do you get it right? Not going to the right. How do you get the policy right? If you want to make sure you get it right based on everything we mentioned here, I would look at the following. Ask for actual proof of performance, not dividend history, but actual proof of performance. And what I'll add is that can be difficult to attain. We were able to obtain that information from the major mutual companies. Those are the only companies I've been able to obtain it from. But one, you can ask for actual proof of performance, meaning a policy that has lived the test of time, and we've seen it produce strong cash value based on reality, not just illustrations. And if that's difficult to get, because that can be difficult to get, number 2, I would look at the guarantees. Because what we've seen to be consistent is that the stronger the guaranteed values are, the stronger the actual values have been over time. So, know that was a lot of information. I hope that you found this video helpful. If you did, please hit the like button, subscribe for more. If you have any questions, please leave them in the comments below. And as always, I hope this helps. Thanks so much. Hey guys, Steve Parisi here. If you enjoyed the content you just saw, please subscribe, like, and hit the notification bell for future videos. If you'd like more information or to see some custom policies for yourself, feel free to call or email our offices at the contact information below.